The White Bear Micropub on Southbourne Grove is a proud supporter of AFC Bournemouth and sponsor of all departments. Head to the Bear for real ales, locally produced food and plenty of good conversations about the cherries. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
Here come the cherries and we're heading for the top of the tree. Bournemouth is a team that's going to show Division 3. Here come the leaders and the scorers at the Saturday, showing how to win the Southern way. So we sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. While you're out there winning, hear the shouting and the singing. We sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. Here come the cherries, here come the cherries, here come the cherries, number one.
Hello and welcome to All Departments. Our gravity-defying cherries brought back all 3 points from the North East yesterday following a first ever league win at St James's Park. Here to enjoy our proximity to Premier League safety is George James. George, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So, the last time we spoke, it was after a frustrating afternoon for the Cherries at Newcastle's rival Sunderland. I assume yesterday was a slightly more enjoyable experience in the North East.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. My dad said we'll be talking about it for years, and it was one of the best away games for years, and one of the best away performances for years, actually.
When I saw the team, I was a bit concerned because Harry Arter went off against Southampton. Eddie then said after the game and in the press conference subsequent to the Newcastle game that King and Arter were doubtful. I was crossing my fingers that Harry would return to the team and it would be a little bit of the usual, smoke and mirrors stuff from Howe. I mean, all managers pull that. And he wasn't in. Dan Gosling came back in. You and I have lavished praise on Harry Arter on this podcast before, and well deserved. Did we miss him yesterday?
You always miss him when he's gone, but since the formation change, we're not. Well, of course he's a wonderful player, but I don't think we're quite as reliant on him in a 4-4-2 as we are in a 4-5-1. Seems more compact. I don't know how, but I mean, even though Gosling was all right, but the fact that this the 4-4-2, the performances since we changed the formation have been really, really good, and yesterday was no different.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the pro 4-4-2 camp at the moment. I thought we needed it with a Phobe. I think he needs somebody up there with him, and so far it's working quite well. Obviously, the results have picked up, and we certainly don't look overrun in midfield, which was, I think, probably the worry. In terms of yesterday's match, I've seen, contrasting reports about Newcastle's performance. Some have been very damning, both in print, and I saw Paul Merson laying into them on Soccer Saturday, and then others that they were a bit more in the game than the more negative reports suggested. I mean, were they in it, or did they really look like a team that were going down?
They didn't. I don't know about a team that was going down. I mean, in a way, and I realise this is a bit pompous to review myself, but in a way, I think yesterday's performance vindicates my criticism of the Sunderland performance, because Sunderland were much. We comfortably beaten Newcastle, who are a better side, and drawn with Sunderland. So they just looked like a team completely devoid of confidence. That was the problem. And you know what? The crowd really didn't help. Even in Bournemouth's absolute darkest days, apart from one incident at Accrington away, the crowd never used to really get on the team's back. But the Newcastle, it took about 11 minutes before they were right on all the players' backs. It's not supportive. And I realise there might be a broader problem and all this kind of thing, but it's not. They're not creating an atmosphere in which players believe in themselves. They're absolutely terrified, and it shows. But I don't think they're a bad side, really.
Yeah, the comparison between the two clubs is not really an easy one to draw in terms of the size and history of the clubs. But one thing you could, I suppose, say is similar is when both clubs have been in trouble, they've been badly run, there hasn't been a great deal of stability within the clubs, and, well, I don't know, Newcastle seem to have plenty of money, but they don't seem to spend it properly. We never had any money until very recently, but I mean, you look at us now compared to what we were sort of in the pre-Eddie Howe era and the mess that was going on, particularly off the pitch. And Newcastle are, I suppose, in a much larger sense, becoming that poster child for how not to run a football club, aren't they?
I wouldn't go that far. Like, you know, there's teams. It's just. There is a cultural problem at Newcastle, I would say, because even the way they treated Pardew, the way he was absolutely hounded out of the club, when he kept them up with basically the same side but with 70 million quid's worth less players in it and kept them up. And you can say what you like about Palace's current form, but he hasn't had 70 million to spend, and he's still 10 points above them. So it is. I always think, right, you can turn on the owner like we've done with Eddie Mitchell. You can turn on the manager like we quite rightly did with Groves. But what was telling yesterday is that they were really berating and getting on the backs of the players. And I've never seen a Bournemouth crowd do that ever. No matter how bad it's got, I've never seen an entire crowd turn on players. So for little mistakes, like Jamal Lascelles at one point did, instead of going forward, just passing it back to the keeper, and they went nuts about it just for a single completed pass, you know, because it wasn't forward. And you know, if someone as minor as that is going to get 50,000 Geordies screaming in your face, you know, you're not going to take a risky long ball, are you? It's just, I wouldn't like to be a player for Newcastle right now. I really wouldn't.
No, that's exactly what Paul Merson said. Funny enough, he said it must be really tough playing for them. And funny you mentioned Pardew as well. I heard a Newcastle fan on the radio this evening talking about Pardew and saying why they didn't like him, saying stuff along the lines of, well, yeah, he used to win about 6 games in a row, but then he'd go off the ball and we'd lose a load of games, and then he'd win 6 in a row again. It's kind of somehow overlooking the fact that kept them in the division for about the 4 years he was there, and I think they finished 5th once. I think that was his first year. But yeah, it was like you said, the kind of the expectation in the club, and I guess the money that they've spent goes hand in hand with that. Is not being reflected in performances and results, and there's deeper problems. Of course, this all played into our hands because we've got the stability behind the scenes, but also we've recently had a mini revival. The draw with Watford, which was a decent enough result, we could have won that game. The morale boosting as well as points boosting victory over Southampton. So going into the game on something of a high, and in this inexplicable way, we always seem to improve at this time of year and have a bad February and then a good March. And yeah, I mean, that was all positive for us, all the things that were going wrong at Newcastle, and the players issuing a statement saying we're backing the manager 2 hours before the game, which is very unusual and never very believable either. If they have to issue a statement saying they're backing him, then you get the feeling there must be problems behind the scene. But up until the goal, from what I've read and what I've seen, Newcastle weren't doing that badly. They had a couple of chances. I think I saw Shelvey, who put one wide of the post from about 20 yards. Riviere had one deflected off France's back. But were we largely dominant, or was it really 50-50 at that point?
I mean, it was dominant implies we were sort of an attacking presence, but we were comfortable in possession. They were limited to real outside of the box pot shots, and as you say, one chance fell to Riviere, which is like a chance missed before he even gets it. He's only scored 1 goal. But Shelvey, is a fantastic player, and I don't know why on earth he's ended up at Newcastle. I mean, and it showed yesterday. He's a really classy player. I mean, people have been saying that Gosling had a poor game. He didn't have a poor game. Shelvey's just a lot better than, I'd say, a lot of midfielders in the league. So he was sort of pulling the strings a bit, but he's got nothing around him, Shelvey. So I mean, for the opening exchanges, it was just usual Bournemouth passing around, broke down, and then limited them to pot shots. Really, it would have been an injustice. They didn't deserve to take the lead, put it that way.
Yeah, I looked at Shelvey yesterday and subsequently as well, but particularly as Newcastle could go out of the division, and thought that would be a player that we could sign if they go down. I mean, I don't know what he's like off the pitch. He has this very leering, menacing look about him, but that's got nothing to do with his actual personality. So, and yeah, I do think he's a quality player. They've paid an awful lot of money for him, and they're going to need to stay up, I think, if they want to justify that outlay. Yeah, but he was probably one of their only bright lights yesterday. I think Janmaat played all right, apparently. But, well, we had good fortune in some respects with our first goal, and it was actually Shelvey was involved in this. He gave the ball away, and then I think Gosling had it, and he made off to charge into the Newcastle penalty area. He never quite made it. Shelvey tackled him, but in tackling him, he sort of lost the ball to Max Gradel, and then Gradel did this kind of tricking his way out of a phone box thing to go past Shelvey and a couple of other Newcastle players who were close to hand, and that actually drew Janmaat out away from Josh King, and Gradel just played the ball to King. King didn't really have many options in the box. Afobe was right at the back post, and there was about 3, maybe even 4 Newcastle players plus Rob Elliott in the line where the ball was going to go. But he drilled it across. It didn't go very far. Taylor stuck his leg out and beat Elliott at the near post. Nothing Elliott could really do about it. Obviously, Taylor didn't mean it. But the goal really, it's hard to really call it a chance, but the goal really came from Gradel's tricky little skills once he actually got possession of the ball, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was really seriously impressive because he beat 3 men. He changed direction so quickly, he just left them standing. And King had nothing on, because even if he'd have made it to Afobe was surrounded by, 5, 6. Afobe was the only person in the box. So King did exactly what you should do in that situation: is put a low ball and hope it gets. I hope exactly what happens. That's the one option that was on. Because I think in the time, the way the play had gone, a lot of players on our team thought we'd lost it. So it started going back. So it was only really Afobe there, and it is just the kind of thing that happens when you're on a 4 run for Newcastle. I mean, but at the same time, we had other chances to score, and Afobe could have put us ahead already. So it wasn't an undeserved lead, even if it was a lucky goal, I would say.
Yeah, well, I don't imagine that improved the mood in the stands, the home supporters, once that one went in, and it's just another. Well, I don't know about nail in the coffin, but certainly a couple of taps on the nails in the coffin for them, seeing that one go in. And then McLaren quickly made a change after that, and I've seen suggestions that it was due to injury or possibly tactical, but Dummett went off and Anita came on, and they went, I think, with the flat back 4 then. I mean, I don't know, you probably didn't have much of a view of that in terms of actually the details, because I saw where the Bournemouth fans were, and you spoke about when you're at, I was going to say Roker Park then, the Stadium of Light being in a kind of different postcode to where the match was actually being played, and that possibly was a similar situation yesterday. But do you think that Dummett was injured, or was he just changing the system?
Well, the system didn't seem to change, but it's an odd selection. I don't know whether Dummett was injured, but it was an odd selection anyway, because Vernon Anita is significantly better than Paul Dummett by any measure. Mitrovic on the bench is significantly better than Riviere by any measure. Sissoko, who's a central midfielder, was played as a winger. Perez, who's basically got the same build as a Smurf, was on his own up front in a 4-4-1 when they're desperate for goals. It was an odd team. I can see why they don't like McLaren, because it was an odd team selection. Why spend £15 million on a striker and then bench him behind a player who's only ever scored once? It's an odd selection. So if it was a system change, then it just makes sense with the rest of the sort of scatty squad selection that day. It was bizarre. It was bizarre. Even the way they were set up was odd, because their goal, I know we're going to come to that, but that was Shelby deep with a long floated ball over the top of the defence. Okay, so that on Match of the Day, you see that's how they scored. Fine. What you wouldn't really appreciate from Match of the Day is they didn't show that 85 times that tactic was tried and just it rolled straight through, or it went out, or it went straight through to Boric. And that was it from McLaren. There was no whip. There was nothing. It was very clear. Shelby was very deep. And he literally very clearly been told float a ball over the top and then hope that the Smurf gets on the end of it, which happened once. And that was it. And like as my dad said, Shelby's got a great shot on him. I'm glad he's so deep, and he's right. So I can see why they don't want McLaren there.
Yeah, I think the substitution, if it was tactical, was a little bit, well, not puzzling, but, well, first of all, as you said, maybe you should have started with Anita, but also, and Koeman did a similar thing the other night. They make Koeman's was definitely tactical. McLaren's may or may not have been. But if it was, why do they wait until a goal is scored to make that change? If they think it's going wrong and they want to make the change, you would think that they would do it sooner than wait for a goal to go in. On the other hand, I mean, Eddie Howe never, I can't remember a single example of him doing anything like that. And the first time he ever seems to make any changes, and it's pretty rare, is half time. So I suppose what I'm saying kind of backs up what you just said about the scatty Paul Grove style approach to team selection and tactics, despite McLaren having quite a lot of experience, international football, European football. It's just, I mean, they've got injuries and stuff to deal with as well, but so have we. And yeah, it's just, we seem to be talking about Newcastle more than we are about Bournemouth this evening, but it is just a bit of a sorry state of affairs, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're sort of going, I mean, this is probably it. They all seem to be blaming Graham Carr and the chief scout, but they've spent 70 million and they're starting a Premier League game with Paul Dunnett, Jamal Lascelles, who's a solid championship player, which is actually a good job now, Stephen Taylor, who runs like the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz, and Janmaat, who's all right. And you're just like, you spent £15 million in January on two midfielders. It's odd. That just what has happened there is odd.
I think it partially adds more weight to what we're seeing a bit more of this season, which is the exposing of the lie, or certainly partial lie, about the way that, just splashing the cash is going to improve the team. I mean, obviously Leicester are top, Watford are doing well, we're doing well. Eddie's brought us up through the divisions at each stage on what is essentially a shoestring for each division. And if you just chuck money at the problem, and also a revolving door of managers, although in Watford's case maybe that is an exception, it rarely works, does it?
Well, it's not the spending, it's just the spending on what? Because actually, chuck it. I mean, we basically chucked cash here, rightly or wrongly, and it's worked for us. Look at Afobe. He wasn't cheap. Graben certainly wasn't cheap, as previously discussed. And it does, clever spending does keep you up. But they bought a midfielder called Thauvin, who for 12 million quid in August, he only played 12 times and now they've loaned him out again. They spent 15 million quid on a striker who they put on the bench. Vindaloo actually looks class, and there's no way that if they go down, he'll stay at Newcastle. He's good enough for the top league of most countries. It's not. I don't think it's necessarily the spending. It's the spending on what? You're starting a game with the rickety old Tin Man and Paul Dummett in defence, and you just spent 30 million quid on English midfielders. It's the on what that's would make me question the running of the club if I was a Newcastle fan.
Let's hope we don't ever fall into that trap as we seem to get richer and richer. You mentioned Afobe. He didn't score yesterday, and I don't know what his performance was like when he hasn't scored. He's a couple of games he's been quite anonymous, but can't argue with 4 goals in 7 Premier League games. And he had apparently a couple of penalty claims yesterday after the goal. I think Colback and Taylor may have fouled him at different times. Were any of those worth a penalty?
The second one was. I think the first one couldn't really see, but it just looked soft and optimistic. But there was another one where the ball basically broke across the goal. Afobe dummied it past Taylor. And then, so the keeper's on the floor, Taylor's on the floor, all he has to do is tap it in, and he went down at that point. And I don't believe that you have any reason to dive there as a striker when it's actually easier to score that than it is the penalty. So I would say we had one which looked from the sky where we were sat to be a solid shout. But the other one just looks soft, so I don't know. So probably yes to one, no to another. But I haven't seen anything.
In terms of his performance yesterday, like I said, there's been some games where he's been quite quiet, and he was quite quiet against Southampton, although he holds the ball up well, and obviously popped up with that goal, which is all he really has to do to justify the money that we spent on him, and I think he's got potential. You've always been quite prophetic in your thoughts about players and the future. How do you see Afobe in terms of now we've had a chance to assess him over a number of games going forward, maybe going into next season? Do you think he's going to prove to be as good a buy as he potentially could be for us?
Yeah, I think so, and also I think it often takes players a very long time to adapt, especially to Eddie's, not just the Premier League, but to Eddie's system. Because even if you look at Josh King, there were absolute cretins at the start of the season saying he was not fit to wear the shirt and all this absolute nonsense after about 4 games. When he wasn't great, and his performance yesterday was phenomenal. He absolutely ran the show. He's my man of the match, Josh King. I mean, Afobe has scored 4 in 7, and he doesn't need to do anything else. And like as you say about Southampton, he scored, but his overall contribution to that game was little other than that. But that's fine. I mean, Brett Pittman did that for years, did nothing for the game, but scored 2. Like, that's fine. People love him. But he's sometimes frustrating to watch, especially when he sort of breaks clear of the defence. He was put through yesterday. So Wilson in this situation either goes to the flank, holds up for a cross, or bullets straight to goal, has a shot that's on target. Afobe, on a number of occasions that I've seen so far, and only 7 appearances, so this is very limited view, has twice just dribbled it into the defence and lost possession. But I do think Eddie's going to have him working on either that hold-up play that you get from Graben or Wilson, or actual sprint clinical finishing in a one-on-one situation. So that's my only criticism of him, because his hold-up play is good, his linking's good, and actually he does very well with the chances he gets most of the time, I'd say. So I think he'll be playing for us for years.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I mean, he's, like we said, he's scored the goals. He's had next to no time to adapt to the way we play. And you look at what Eddie's done. I mean, you mentioned King. We've seen other players. I mean, you could go through the whole team and pick out about, 7 or 8 players that Eddie's made look just brilliant from very humble beginnings. And yeah, I think going forward, Afobe could be a huge player for us. I mean, my mind is beginning to wander and daydream about him and Wilson and how they'll play together should they be regularly selected together. And I think there's promise there, and put a pre-season into both of them. Obviously, Wilson regaining his fitness and Afobe getting the chance to really get on top of what Eddie wants out of him and benefit from the coaching that he's going to get. And it just looks so rosy. Obviously, there's always a chance that it could get injured. Any player can get injured. Somebody could be sold, but at the moment, and obviously we're now getting almost there in terms of being safe for next season. The future just looks so bright, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is a mouth-watering prospect. I mean, this is again very early days to do it, and he might change the playing style, but I do think I can't see Eddie the way we've seen Wilson put into games and Afobe. I don't think he'll play them together. Unless he pulls one of them back, because they are two out and out shoulder of the last man attackers. And I think for Eddie's system, whether this is right or wrong, I would be surprised to see them deployed together. But I think he might put Callum just behind or out wide, or he'll find some way of doing it. But the squad now is just really, really good. And I mean, even the bench yesterday. There's players that we used to just absolutely dream about signing who just can't even get in the team. I just think, Tommy Elphick's on the bench. Mark Pugh, who's just had a fantastic season, can't get in the team. Sylvan Distan, who actually his recent performances have been class. Glenn Murray, who I thought was an excellent signing and has done well for us, on the bench. Graben, 10 million quid, and O'Kane, who's been there for years. So Graben's
transfer fee seems to be going up every time I speak to you.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's good. I don't know. He was a fortune. He's on the bench, so it's a very, very strong squad. So it is, and there is a reason that we're 11 points clear. These are just man for man better players than Would you rather have Jack Colback or Dan Gosling? You go through that team. Would you rather have the Tin Man or Simon Francis? It's just. Adam Smith, or even Janmaat, who was quite expensive. I'd rather have Adam Smith. So, there are 3 teams worse than Bournemouth in the league comfortably now at this point.
All Departments is sponsored by the White Bear Micro Pub on Southbourne Grove, the perfect pre- and post-game venue to chat about the game, and only a 25-minute walk to the ground, or there's a bus stop right outside. Wear your AFCB shirt on any match day and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk. So, into the second half, I think by now we were looking pretty confident. And obviously you mentioned that the crowd were not very enamoured with the Newcastle team or the manager. And we seemed to be on top in the second half. I think we had a chance, or what should have been a better chance, when King stole the ball off Lascelles, and him and Afobe were then 2v2 on the Newcastle goal. King delayed the pass, and then when he did pass it, he either thought Afobe was somewhere else or didn't. Well, when I saw it, it looked like he just kicked the ball too hard to the wrong place. It didn't really matter in the end, but that was quite a good chance for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, and having watched it back, I do blame Afobe for that. If you watch the replay, at the point the ball is played, Afobe's on his heels, like almost stationary, and then has to break into a run. To try and get it, and he gets it out wide, and the chance disappeared. But Wilson or other strikers in that situation will be zigzagging in and out of the defender, giving King multiple runs to get to. There's no way he should just be stationary. I think maybe he just expected King to have a shot, which would be fair enough in the circumstances. But yeah, they should have done more with it. But it wasn't a major concern. And actually, the shot from Smith was really good. Took a good save. That passenger play finished with an absolute rocket from Adam Smith when it came back out. So, but I mean, yeah, they didn't make the most of it. But that was. It didn't feel like it mattered because all afternoon they looked like they were going to score. So it wasn't. You know, sometimes when you're sort of clinging on in a game and you think, oh, that's so important. I don't think anyone in the Bournemouth end was thinking, oh, that's it. You know. They looked like all afternoon from literally kick off. It looked like there were goals in that team. So yeah, it was a good chance, but yeah, what can you do?
McLaren brought on Mitrovic in the second half. He's always a player that looks like he's going to cause problems. And I think he may have had a shot where he put a 20-yarder wide after Ritchie lost the ball. But were Newcastle anything of a threat in the second half? I mean, obviously they scored, but prior to that?
No, because he changed the system, he changed the personnel, but the system didn't change. The whole I said it earlier, but the whole McLaren one plan A, B, C, D, E was give it to Shelby and lob the ball over. So he brought Mitrovic on, who I think is a really, really good player. And then instead of just Perez running after the ball, it was two players running after the same ball. You know, it wasn't like they were link up playing little triangles like Bournemouth do and, you know, around it. Nothing changed. There was still no width. You had Sissoko on the wing. They didn't look a threat. It was a surprise when they scored. And when they did look a threat, it was, as you say, because I mean, Ritchie wasn't on it yesterday, up to his own high standards. But it was when we lost the ball. It was Bournemouth mistakes that were giving them all their scraps of chances.
Eddie took Max Gradle off after about an hour and put Mark Pugh on. Gradle's played most of the game against Watford and most of the game, almost all of the game against Southampton, and then played for an hour yesterday. And he's come back into the team and looked spot on. You know, we mentioned about his skill that led to the first goal. I thought he was great against Watford and a solid performance, if not quite as spectacular, against Southampton. I mean, I know some players have natural fitness, and fair enough, Eddie took him off after an hour yesterday playing, essentially 3 games in just over a week when he's just come back from a serious long-term injury. But can you give any, I know it's speculation, but any explanation as to how, where other players need to have a practice match or two, I mean, obviously we don't have the option of getting him back in the cups anymore, to get back up to full fitness. He seems to just return back from, spending the winter in the warmth of the Ivory Coast and looked every inch, fit as a fiddle, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. It looks exactly like he was before the injury, which is always a relief when it's a knee injury, because some players always come back the same. But yeah, I mean, I've seen a few videos he's posted of his training, and he went. I think he went back to France and had a personal trainer, and they all did because they're footballers, but he's posted videos of him working really, really, really hard. So it showed in his performance. And I mean, I don't think he was that tired when he got subbed off, but he gave the impression of being tired. And I don't want this to sound overly harsh, because he's a great shout for man of the match. I'd pick King. Maxi is right up there with a shout, definitely in the top 3 performance of Bournemouth. But before he went off, he played one of the worst through balls in the history of the Premier League, where you looked at it and it just rolled out, and I couldn't even work out what he was trying. And it was just a minor incident, but that made him look so tired. That I think he was up on that point. But you're bringing on Mark Pugh, who's just in wonderful form as well. So it's a testament to the strength we've got on the wings now. Bringing on Mark Pugh, the goals he scored, the goal he scored at Palace. We've got a lot of players in very, very good form at the moment.
Yeah, you see Pugh coming on, you don't think, oh no, we've got a player of Gradle's quality going off and he's being replaced by somebody of
Willie Huck.
Yeah, somebody of significantly less quality. They've got different attributes, but I mean, Pugh, like you said, he offers a lot going forward. And he offers quite a lot, when he tracks back and helps out as well. So all good in terms of seeing him come on. Fabi did go off as well about 10 minutes later for our favourite player, Lewis Grabban, and then we scored soon after, and Grabs was involved in this one. And this was, you mentioned the worst through ball in the history of the Premier League. This must have been right up there in terms of the worst defending in the history of the Premier League. My son's under-9s team could have done a better job than Newcastle did with this goal. Simon Francis bombed forward and gave it to Ritchie, and him and Grabban just had all kinds of time to pass the ball amongst themselves, which was bad enough from the Newcastle point of view. But the worst thing, or what I consider to be the worst thing, was that Ritchie, who was basically, in yards of space, was then able to pass the ball in a straight line to Josh King, who was stood on the edge of the box with two Newcastle players either side of him, but both of them at least 2, maybe 3 yards away from him. I'm assuming nobody else was in a threatening position in the box. Grabban wasn't in the box. He was in and around where Ritchie was. And then King just turned around and thought, well, happy days, there's loads of space. I'll just run a bit into near the 6-yard box and fire it into the net. I mean, great for us. It sounds like we deserved the goal. But why? It's not exactly something that you need to be a Premier League player to know about. Why were the Newcastle players not standing closer to the Bournemouth players? It was just unbelievable.
No, it was odd, and actually, even in the build-up, there was a ball played down the line, and this is what I mean about Newcastle, just because every single thing in that team was set up for Shelby Young ball. Okay, so even they were so narrow. It was unbelievable. So even the initial, I think it was Francis played a ball to either Smith or Ritchie, right down the line, and that was 35-yard ball to feet, uncontested. Ritchie gets it in space. Ritchie passes it off again, jogs inside. No one tracks him. No one picks up his pass. And the actual turn was so easy. The only time you see that is when the defenders have stopped because it's offside.
Yeah.
And they are so stationary. The first thing I did after the ball was put in the net was look at the linesman. I was like, has that happened? Like, because it was really bad, really, really bad defending. But in every phase of that play, the ball down the line, the lack of tracking, the lack of marking, even if you watch King when he's turned, he's basically jogging towards the 6-yard box, and just absolutely unleashed it. And what a finish, by the way, that needs to be mentioned. What a finish that was! Fantastic goal, really, really good. So I mean, it was bad defending, but at the same time, it's the difference between winning and losing that game is the way that Bournemouth defend. Bournemouth were like a swarm of wasps yesterday when Newcastle were attacking. The reason I think they were resorting to this long ball is because it was just three, sometimes even 4 players just absolutely swarming around the ball until they got it back, winning it back, high intensity, pressing. And it was just the opposite. It was just the opposite for Newcastle. And so you can say it was bad defending, which it was, but at the same time, it took a great finish because we saw that flipping goalkeeper and how good he is. Even if you're allowed to just walk up to him, he's still going to flip and save it going on his performance at home. So it still took a great finish. It was a good build-up anyway. The reason it looked so easy was because the movement, the passing, it was all to feet. There's no long ball in there. which a lot of teams, including Newcastle, resort to. So it is a good goal. So yes, it was bad defending, but it's an excellent goal, and it's a team goal as well.
And King, of course, mentioned him earlier, the improvement in his game, and you said you'd have given him man of the match. I certainly would have. Well, he would have been a good shout with me for man of the match against Southampton, because in that game, his pace and chasing the ball was constant thorn in their side, and I'm assuming it was a similar situation yesterday. Obviously, as a forward, the thing he needs to add to his game is goals. He had the baby last week. Maybe he thought, well, got a family now. Time to get a new contract. I better start scoring a few goals. But I mean, if you had the graph of his improvement over the course of the season, I suppose since, well, maybe Christmas, maybe even before that, it's just shot up, hasn't it? He's just such an asset to the way we play now, isn't he?
Well, there's what was harsh on King is I don't think Eddie at any point signed him the role that he was forced into by everyone's knee exploding. If you look at the games and the way he was deployed before Christmas, he was having to do what Afobe is doing now. And he is not and has not been deployed as that player since Afobe's come in, since squad places of people have come back into the squad for injury, and in the role he's in now, I don't think it really matters if he doesn't get a huge amount of goals, because the service that he provided yesterday, Southampton game, even in the Palace game when he came on, is as a defender, if you're under pressure, if you're Steve Cook and you're going to play the one pass that you always play, your lobbed, punted, high bouncing ball into the opposition half, doesn't matter how many players are on him, it doesn't matter what circumstances, wind, rain, how far it comes out of the sky, Josh King will get it down and he will pass it to a red shirt. And that is such a hard skill. And that's what he's doing. He just keeps possession, keeps it ticking over, and then it was that role yesterday. It was just phenomenal. I mean, I'm a striker, so I appreciate especially how difficult it is. It's incredible, and it's something that is just like it's like how Sermon got overlooked last year, because it's not spectacular and it's not flashy and it doesn't count in your stats, but just bringing it down in the circumstances that he manages to and passing it off is so hard. And that's what's improved. That's the difference. He's not having to run on the shoulder of the last man, and he's not having to make these. He's a little bit deeper. He's got a little bit more freedom, but he's just superb in that role. And I presume that's why Eddie signed him, because since the situation with the squad has changed, that's how he's been deployed, and it's coincided with a massive improvement in his performance.
Yeah, I can't see him losing his place in the team if he continues to play like that. Even if Wilson's fit, he might be taken off for Wilson if Wilson's coming back to fitness, or I guess if we're safe mathematically, then Wilson might get a start towards the end of the season. But at the moment, I think he's straight on the team sheet, which you wouldn't have said six months ago. But like you say, the circumstances haven't necessarily favoured him or anybody else, but we've made it work one way or another, and it's all looking really good. And then we've looked at their goal a little bit. You said this was a tactic they tried to pull time and again yesterday. I didn't realise that.
It's about attempt 85, yeah.
Yeah. Elliott booted it out. Somebody in the midfield got on the end of it, but it made its way to Shelvey quite quickly, and he released it quickly over the top to Perez. Steve Cook, well, he didn't really. I was going to say he missed the header. He wasn't really close enough. He tried to get to it, but it was just too far away from him to make any contact. And then Perez outrun Francis and he was clean through. And he put it past Boris, and it all looked very, very tidy. I mean, you mentioned you're a striker. On the few goals that I've scored in my laughable football career, whenever the ball sort of bounces at that height between the foot and the knee, and it sits up nicely like that, and you can strike it into the goal. It's always a lovely thing to do, because it's quite, well, it favours the striker a lot, because you can get, a really good clean strike on the ball in that position. But and of course Perez scored at Dean Court, and I wouldn't say it was a similar goal, but a similar kind of finish. So that made it 2-1. But I mean, were you worried at that point they were going to come back into it?
Well, only because it's Bournemouth. I mean, not because Newcastle looked like they were going to score again. Quite the opposite, actually. I mean, you'd think in that situation, I don't know if you remember under Kevin Bond, but in that situation, he always used to just put 11 men, line them up on the edge of the penalty box, and then do it. But they didn't look like, even when they got a goal back, you just think, oh, typical Bournemouth and all this stuff. But actually, it's not anymore.
No.
They just passed around, made Newcastle chase the game, made them chase the ball, kept possession well. It was all managed very well, and they didn't. It wasn't like they had this giant urgency, and Boric was making a load of saves, and it was fine. And it felt fine as well. It felt frustrating and irritating. It's never going to be easy with Bournemouth, but within 5 minutes you were just thinking, 3 points are in the bag again. And so were the Newcastle fans. They were going mad. They're still. They were playing as if it was 0-0 Newcastle, so it was an odd. There are a number of things about that Newcastle side that just feel strange. So there was no urgency, and that's what would wind me up if I was a Newcastle fan.
Yeah, I think the point you make about us not being that team anymore, that will just suddenly start defending a lead. I mean, even at home. Going into the latter stages of the game, but having everybody back deep and just inviting the opposition on to us and hoping that somehow we won't concede the equaliser or, well, depending on the circumstances, the winner. I mean, it happens to everybody over the course of a season, but we've seen out games a lot better in recent times than we used to. And it's great because you just feel so much more confident when we're trying to, just do what we always do, or what we have always done the last few years: play the ball around, obviously retain possession, get into their half, and run the clock down, but not in a kind of panicky way. And I certainly prefer that to those tactics you described of 11 men behind the ball and just defending for dear life and hoping for the best, and because that just invites the other team.
Well, it never worked. Never worked. It never worked either. Bond did that for his entire managerial career, and it just never worked. It was bizarre because it invites so much pressure and panic and unease, even amongst the crowd, that the opposition just thinks, right, we're in this. And it took some really spectacularly bad teams to not score against a team who aren't crossing their own halfway line. So, I'm glad those days are long behind us now.
We've touched on Lewis Grabban a little. He was involved in the second goal. Did his bit there. He had I haven't seen this. They didn't show on Match Today. I haven't seen anywhere else. He had a couple of chances. One of them from about 10 yards sounds like it was gilt edged. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, but he did miss it. Yeah, I wouldn't criticise him for that. He didn't miss it by much. It came to him at the back post, and he took it down, got it under control very quickly, and then absolutely lashed it, and it just missed the far post by about an inch. And because it needed to, from the angle he was stood, it needed to be really good to beat the keeper. So I can't criticise him for that. A lot of strikers would do that, even at any level. Even you see Aguero doing stuff like that. It was fine. And then the other one he had was a good effort that was well saved from outside the box. So he was very good yesterday. He played very well.
Yeah, I thought he was good against Southampton. When we did the podcast for Southampton, we had a little technical problem, and me and Dave chatted about Grabban and the way he played when he came on, but it didn't make the make the final cut because it it disappeared into cyberspace somewhere. I thought he looked like fit.
I thought he was very good. I thought he was very good in that game as well. I thought he was excellent. And he hasn't missed a 1-1, I don't think. Oh, well, actually he has, but not in those two games.
No, I think I don't think he was fit when he came back. I mean, he hadn't played much football. I'm not sure how fit he is now, but I think he's fitter, and I think that makes a difference. He certainly looked against Southampton, and he wasn't on the pitch for ages. He was on for about, I think, 20 minutes. He looked like a bit more like the Graben of old, and I thought, yeah, we're gonna see a bit more of that. Maybe not till next season, when hopefully, as we discussed earlier, we'll have this rich seam of strikers to select. But yeah, it's looking like he may start to pay back some of that transfer fee soon-ish, and I'll love it when he gets back in the goals, because, as you know, I do quite like him. And obviously, on the subject of goals and seeing the game out, we did it in the best possible fashion. In injury time, Charlie Daniels scored a little exchange with Mark Pugh, although having read about it and then seen it, it was mainly Charlie Daniels' attacking intent and Newcastle's just poor positional play that at least led to the chance. I think they may have expected when Charlie got the ball off Pugh, and that wasn't far over the halfway line, I don't think. I think they may have expected him to head for the corner and just taken a step in the wrong direction. And I mean, we've seen it all season. Ronald Koeman seemed somewhat surprised by it on Tuesday night, but Charlie bombed into the box, and he from the diagonal on the edge of the box, he put the ball through two defenders. I mean, there was a big gap between them, or big enough certainly, and then scored at the far post. Elliott, I don't think it was probably the one place Elliott couldn't get to, although, yeah, like you said, he played brilliant at Dean Court, Elliott, and it was such a relief to get a little bit of revenge for that defeat, because we never should have lost that game at Dean Court. And I mean, Daniels, he just goes from strength to strength, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he deserves an England call-up, especially with Luke Shaw injured, and he does deserve it. And it's not biased, because when it first came up, I was like, fine. But when you look at actually who else is available at left back, he's up there. He's comfortably in the top 2 or 3. And the context that was missing from the goal on Match of the Day is that the last 2 or 3 times we had the ball, Bournemouth had headed straight to the corner. So Newcastle thought, right, well, they're not doing that again. We'll shepherd him inside. Which didn't go that well for them, but it was unsavable. It was unsavable. I don't think any goalkeeper in the Premier League would have saved that. 2 through defenders, so you see it late, and then it nestled right next to the posting in the inside netting. Great goal, great run, and polished it off. A 2-goal winning margin was right in that game. 3 would have been generous, but a 2-goal winning margin was right, and it was absolutely deserved, and it punished 15 minutes of absolute lethargy. When in reality it could have been the point that kept them up if they'd have got back in it in Newcastle. So, it was a really, really good assured performance.
Yeah, we look a different side. Well, that's maybe going a bit far. You can see the difference between the type of team we are and the quality of our team and the way we play, in comparison to the teams who are outside of, well, the very top of the table. Maybe go down as far as maybe 6th place. But then after that, obviously we beat Southampton the other night. We've had good results elsewhere, but you get the feeling now we can compete with anybody until you get up to that part of the table. We'll get a chance to even try and turn some of those teams over in the next few weeks going into the end of the season. But, I mean, you mentioned the defending. We didn't get the clean sheet yesterday, but you could say the defending's improved recently. Certainly the goals against has improved, but we've done a really good job defending against, well, not the best strikers in the league, but, you know...
We got a 0-0 draw at Leicester with 10 men. People forget this. You know, we got 0-0 at Leicester. Arsenal only put 2 past us. We beat West Ham. We beat Man United. We beat Southampton. And, you know, that's half the top 8.
Mm.
So,
no, I think it's just that I would like to think that our rising confidence and improved goals against in recent games will carry on into the fixtures that we've got coming up. I mean, Tottenham, for example, which I think is only 2 games away now, they're doing really well, and they have found themselves in a position where, you know, if they don't win the league this year, then it could be another 50 years until they win it, although Pochettino is looking like an excellent manager. And going there, you think, well, that's a tough one, and hopefully maybe we'll chat about Swansea in a minute, but we might have some more points on the board by then. And I'll just be interested to see how we cope against them. I mean, they beat us 5-1 earlier in the season, and will we put in an improved performance, or will we see, as we saw in the game at Dean Court, and we took the lead in that game, you know, that there's still quite a big gap between us and those teams. And you mentioned Leicester, obviously an anomaly, and well, I've certainly enjoyed their success this season, and it's even better when you think that they couldn't beat us. But you know, is there going to be still that gap in quality between us and those teams near the top of the table? And I suppose Tottenham is the one game we've got left where they're still playing at the top of their game, isn't it? So, I mean, do you think we're gonna? Well, do you think we're gonna lose 5-1 again in that game?
I think we might. That is a superb side, and I quite strongly dislike Tottenham, but Dele Alli and Dia should be the England midfield, and I think will be the England midfield for ages. The goal that Kane scored at the weekend, you can't stop a striker having the ball at that part of the pitch, and he still managed to curl it into the far corner. I think they've got the best goalkeeper in the league. If we do lose 5-1, obviously I really hope we don't. I'd love to absolutely smash them. It would give me great pleasure because I play in a team full of Tottenham fans. But there will be absolutely no shame if we lose 5-1 again to Tottenham. I think they're one of the best to comfortably. I think they are better than Leicester, and I actually think they're. You know, I said I came on the podcast and we lost to Arsenal and said I was, you know, all right with it. But I think Tottenham at the moment are looking even better than Arsenal were. So, you know, a point will be celebrated wildly by me if we get one.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think so. Before that, of course, Swansea. They've had a resurgence recently, somewhat like ourselves. Their resurgence seems to have come in direct correlation to the amount of time their manager, unfortunately, is spending in hospital. Definitely was the right result, well, I thought, for us yesterday. Them beating Norwich, because it just further demoralises Norwich, who seem to be seriously on the slide. But all of that said, our tails are up as well. We're at home. The win would give us almost guaranteed Premier League football next season, but it's not must win because there's plenty more games left, and I don't think, well, if we mess it up from here, then it's going to be a huge surprise, isn't it?
Well, it's going to take an incredible run, because you're looking at it to get 40 points, which people say it's not, but I think will be plenty this season because the 4 at the bottom are so awful. We need from the last games, which include West Brom, Villa, Swansea, and there's a couple of others that aren't, you know, that are hardly Man City. we need 1 win and 2 draws from 9 matches. So it would be extraordinary, and even the bookies were something like 25 to 30 to 1 to get relegated now. So it would be. It would be absolutely amazing for us to go down below any of the 4 of Sunderland, Norwich, Newcastle, or Aston Villa. It's almost verging on the impossible because they're so bad. All 4 of those teams, they are just bad teams. So I can't see us going down at this point now.
No, I think this is the first time this weekend where I felt much more certain that we're going to stay up than having a nagging doubt, are we going to be all right, or maybe worse than a nagging doubt at times. So it's all looking good. So finally then, and I think throughout the time that I've done the podcast, you've come on and made confident and what have proved to be accurate predictions about our strength and ability to firstly stay in the Championship, and then, well, you didn't quite predict we were going to win it last season, but you were pretty emphatic in your praise about how good we were as the season went on, and then this season you were happy that we were going to stay up even when, like you said, we lost to Arsenal, and we weren't anywhere near safety then, although we didn't have too bad a December. So I'm not going to ask you to give me the exact position, but whereabouts do you think we're going to finish in the table at the end of the season?
I think we will finish. I'd expect us to finish on about 42 to 45 points, which will put us at probably 12th or 13th. Because Crystal Palace are right on the slide now. Swansea are a good side, but they have a real goal scoring problem, so I can't see them. Sunderland, Norwich, and Newcastle, Villa, I think, are nailed on for the bottom 4. Watford, West Brom. I mean, I don't, how they're 11th is like. I mean, that is almost miraculous. I know they beat Man U today, but I 13th. I'll guess now 13th.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I went for 14th at the start of the season. That was prior to us having the team wrecked in the opening weeks of the season by all the injuries. I guess I could stick with 14th, 13th, 14th. None of it bothers me. I think we're going to... we should, the way things are looking, be quite a few places above the relegation zone and sneaking into mid-table. So I did say that was the last thing, but just one more thing. There's been a huge number of examples to choose from over the last few years with Eddie Howe and the Cherries. I've seen people saying that this would be his greatest achievement to keep us in this division in the face of, well, obviously we're in the Premier League, but secondly having the squad decimated by those injuries that we mention every week. I don't personally agree with that. I think that some of the stuff that went on in the early days, keeping us in the Football League, was a massive achievement. I think that was his greatest achievement, actually. There's arguments to be made. I mean, last season was just fantastic. Do you think this is going to be his greatest achievement as Bournemouth manager?
No, his first season was the greatest. His first season, he took over on New Year's Day on -1 points with a squad that had only got 16 points in the previous half season and kept them up by about 6-7 points. And you can look at it and say, oh yeah, Luton got -30, but even the players, if you look at the squads that we had and the performances that he managed to suck out of, it's such a paper-thin squad. He used to bring Jason Tyndall on. He used to bring Jason Stockley on after his maths class, Like, paper-thin doesn't even cover it. Keeping us up that season is his greatest achievement. Like, right, even if we qualify for Europe next season, it will still be his greatest achievement. I genuinely believe that, because it is extraordinary what happened that year. Absolutely extraordinary.
No, I do wholeheartedly agree with that. And he'd have to do something exceptional, which he has done since. But I mean, like win the Premier League or something for it to beat that. In my eyes, I understand that people will look at other things that have happened. I think the best thing about this discussion is we've got so much to choose from. You sort of overlook subsequently getting promoted out of League Two, getting promoted out of League One, which would have put you down as a legendary Bournemouth manager at any other time, and he's just gone beyond that, and those things are just footnotes in his CV, really. And so we've just got something else to add to it this season, and who knows what will happen in the future. But going forward, it's always going to be a pleasure to have you back on the show next season, and we might speak to you again this season, but much appreciated hearing from you this year. And I know you put a lot of time and a lot of miles into following the team around the country, and it's always good to hear what you've got to say, particularly for the further flung games that I don't always make it to myself. So thanks ever so much for coming on the show, George, and enjoy what should be a really enjoyable end to the season.
No, I hope so, yeah, and thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Full marks as always to George. Really appreciating reporting back from both of our trips to the far corner this season. Don't forget, for a double dose of Cherry's audio action, listen out for Sam and Sean's Back of the Net in the middle of the week, by which time it will only be a few more days until our heroes in red and black may all but guarantee a slice of next season's copious Premier League booty with a win over resurgent Swansea City of Wales. Swap the cherries in all departments, and goodbye. This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear, your local micropub on Southbourne Grove, where you can't watch the game, but you can definitely talk about it. Head to the White Bear on any AFCB match day wearing your team shirt and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.